This is definitely the most powerful do-it-yourself handheld that we've ever had over here on the channel. It'll run anything that you throw at it. It's got a 13.4-inch, 180Hz display, 128 gigabytes of RAM running at 8,000 megatransfers per second, and it's powered by the AMD Ryzen Ai MAX Plus 395. And again, it's more of a DIY handheld, but it doesn't mean we can't get good battery life and great performance. Of course, it's a bit bulky for a handheld, a little awkward to hold, but overall, it's been a pretty awesome experience with this setup here. Just taking a look at the overall device, some of you out there probably already know what's going on here, and I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. I just really couldn't find the right controller for a setup like this. What we've got is the Asus ROG Flow Z13. So it's a 2-in-1, kind of a tablet. It's got a detachable keyboard. We've got that Max Plus 395 APU. This is the 128 gigabyte version. And to get all of this put together, I needed a controller that would work out with this. And unfortunately, there's not many controllers on the market that will fit a 13.4-inch tablet without any kind of modification. So that's exactly what we had to do. Now, Razer does make the new Razer Kishi XL Pro, but unfortunately, the USB Type-C ports on this are in kind of a weird location, and that controller only works over USB Type-C. So I opted to use the GameSir G8 Plus. This is an expandable Bluetooth controller, and GameSir does make a USB Type-C version known as the Galileo. Comes with a few extras here and there, and it's not a super cheap controller. I mean, I think this was like $68 for what we've got. Usually works with something like up to, let's say, the iPad mini. And in the end, it's not a bad controller overall for a phone or a smaller tablet like that. But as you can see, it's just not going to fit this 13.4-inch device. Now, we've got some springs in here, and we can modify this to work. Luckily, there are some 3D prints online, and people sell kits to go ahead and make this fit a 13 or up to a 16-inch device. Really cool that they've got these, and recently I was just scrolling on Amazon, found this here. It's the new version, so there's no soldering required whatsoever. It is a 3D printed job, and it does come with a holder, so if you wanted to use this with a smaller device once it's installed, you definitely could. It's pretty simple to install on that G8 Plus, comes with everything you need here. The G8 Plus does have a little rubber pad on the front of it, and we need to get under here to remove 3 screws. So I did use a heat gun just to heat this up so we could get to them. But once we get that, we'll pull half of the back off. And if you take a look, the new version of this 3D printed expander for the G8 Plus does come with some copper rods installed. And that'll allow it to make connection between one side and the other once it's all closed up. The older version, you had to do a little bit of soldering, or you could kind of piece it all together. I do like this, and it didn't take long at all to install. So there's kind of 2 ways that we can use this. The Flow Z13 does have a built-in kickstand, and we can go over the top of it with the controller, or we can use that kickstand right over the controller. That way we've still got that stand accessible. So yeah, I mean, it actually works out way better than I thought it would. And you can always move the controller up to the midsection if you wanted to, but since I want to use this kickstand here, I've got it near the bottom. But if you wanted to go up with it, it shouldn't be an issue to do so. I do think that Asus kind of missed out on releasing a controller for this thing, and I know a lot of people aren't going to go out and buy this specifically to set it up like a handheld gaming device. But if you've got the Flow Z13, which I've actually been using for months as my main desktop PC, connected in kind of docked mode, then you've always got the option to go ahead and throw a controller on this thing and make it more portable. So obviously, one of the most important things about a handheld is going to be battery life, and that's something I kind of want to go over in this video. To control TDP, we've got a few different options. You can use Armory Crate, and while it's not plugged into the wall, we've got a couple modes. We've got Windows, Silent, and Performance. In performance mode, it'll do up to around 54 watts, which is going to really unleash that Max Plus 395. You can still plug it into wall power. That way we can get turbo mode and manual mode all the way up to 80 watts. But what I personally like to use is an application known as x86 Tuning Utility. And I've been doing a lot of testing with this tablet for months now. This thing functions really well down to a 12-watt TDP. Any lower than that, the CPU and GPU are really fighting for power because after all, we've got 16 cores, 32 threads, and that Radeon 8060S, which has 40 compute units. If you think about it, something like the ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme has a 12 compute unit RDNA 3 based iGPU. But on battery with this setup, playing games at 1200p because we've got a 16:10 aspect ratio display here, 30 to 35 watts from medium to high, depending on what kind of resolution scale you're using, does work out really well with a lot of newer AAA games. So I've set up a few different power profiles, and for the most part, if I want to play at 1200p, medium, high settings, I'm going to be at 30 to 35 watts. It will run some newer AAA games even at an 18-watt TDP at 1080 with low medium settings. You kind of have to experiment with it, but what I want to get is kind of the best performance and decent battery life out of this. As for indie games, we can go much lower than that, and by the end, we'll take a look at overall battery life at a few different TDP settings. First game we have here, just wanted to show you what we've got going on. This is Forza Horizon 5. We're at a 30-watt TDP. 1200p high settings, no resolution scale, getting over 100 FPS on average. This is a 16:10 aspect ratio display. It does up to 1600p, so 2560 by 1600. You can take it down to like 1600 by 1000. Still looks good. And if you don't mind going a little bit lower, you can take the TDP way down on a lot of games. Next up, Spider-Man 2, and at a lower TDP, this doesn't function super well on this chipset. This game has given us a lot of issues since it released, especially on iGPUs. I'm at 30 watts right now. We're at 1200p medium settings with FSR set to balance. We're getting a good frame rate, but every once in a while it's a bit choppy. You could alleviate a lot of this by turning on frame gen if you wanted to, and with frame gen on, we could take this down to 20 watts and still see around the same kind of frame rate that we're getting right now. Here's Marvel Rivals, and this did way better than I thought it would. I actually had to go back into the settings to make sure I didn't have frame gen on because the performance here at the kind of wattage with knowing how this game performs on iGPUs is really good. Seeing an average of around 74 FPS even during battle here, and we're at high settings 1200p with FSR set to balance. Of course, we had to see how Cyberpunk 2077 performs. So this is at a 30-watt TDP. We're at high settings, 1200p, and I'm using XeSS right now, set to balance. You could go with FSR, but I do think XeSS does look a little cleaner here as opposed to FSR 2.1 or even FSR 3, which we do have. But there's a way to get way more out of this. We can take the settings up to high, stay at 1200p, FSR set to quality with frame gen on. Now we can get over 100 FPS and we're at a 35-watt TDP. Taking it down to around 25 watts will net us around 80 FPS with frame gen on using these same settings. And I gotta say, this display is not an OLED, it's an IPS, but it looks absolutely amazing. And with this thing plugged into the wall in turbo mode, we can play Cyberpunk 2077 at 1600p, so 2560 by 1600, high settings, and get an average of 72 FPS with no frame gen on. But that's a much higher wattage than we want to run here on battery. So that's the next thing I kind of want to talk about here, battery life with a setup like this. Right now, we're running a super easy to run indie game. I'm set to a 12-watt TDP using x86 tuning utility. It doesn't need to pull 12 watts to run this game. We're under 7 watts, but up in the top left-hand corner, right there with Afterburner, this is our total battery draw, everything going on with the system. Screen brightness is at 50%. I don't have the RGB on around back. Under 12 watts in total draw from the 70 watt-hour battery we have here. I also went through and tested some AAA gaming at 20 watts and 35 watts. You can see we've got a pretty big jump here. We're at a 20 watt TDP, drawing a total of 30 watts from the battery. And I do think the dual fan system here is kind of the main cause of pulling more of this wattage. If we take a look at 35 watt TDP testing, our total battery draw is now 45.5 watts, a little over that. And those fans are spinning up more than they would be at a lower wattage, and they can definitely add to this draw. So given what we know about the unit, we've got a 70 watt hour battery here, with the screen brightness set to 50% through all of my testing, 60 Hz refresh rate, that's kind of important here. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are on, but the RGB around back is off. 12 watt mixed indie gaming, we can get around 5 hours and 30 minutes of runtime out of this thing. Taking it up to a 20 watt TDP for AAA gaming, it's pulling 30.5 watts on average, so around 2 hours and 25 minutes. And with 35 watt AAA gaming, 45.3 watts on average, that's around 1 hour and 30 minutes. So not crazy good battery life at those higher wattages, but it could be much worse. So is it worth doing something like this? Well, like I mentioned, I wouldn't run out and buy a Z13 and a controller specifically for a handheld system. But if you've already got the Z13 or you were planning on getting one to use it as a tablet or a 2-in-1 laptop, just keep in mind, you can always use a controller like this. And again, you can slide it up if you don't want to use that kickstand in the back. It does kind of give it a little more balance there. But with this controller and that extension kit, it's not going to come out of here. It's actually a pretty sturdy little setup. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Really appreciate you watching. I've also got an SSD with BASI installed. If you want to see a video like that, just let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in picking up the Z13 or maybe this controller and the extension, I'll leave links in the description. And like always, thanks for watching.